Hi everyone and welcome to the All Things ITSM Global podcast, coming to you from BMC Engage in Las Vegas. I'm Kirsty McGowan, I'm here with Charlie Betts.
Hello, Kirsty.
Carlos Casanova.
Kirsty.
And now we're going to be speaking with Carey Walker from NBN in Australia. Welcome, Carey.
Thank you, hi.
Welcome, Carey. So Carey, this digital transformation, these experiences, these workplaces, digital, everything's digital these days. We have data. Organizations have data, throughout the organization, usually too much. How is it that we're going to start taking this and transform this? Whether is it a new mindset, is it new tools? How do we start taking a lot of this foundational information that we have that are in the bits and bytes, and piecing it back together into this new mindset and this new experience that we're trying to evolve to?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think mindset is a big part of it. And I think we do a good job of having the bits and pieces, the foundation layers, if you like. But the mindset has to change in terms of the types of data we need and the volumes of data that I anticipate are going to be part of the solutions in the future. And I think the way we start thinking about new types of data that may not have been part of our requirements or our world before, and certainly the volumes of data that we're now going to have to be managing as we move towards the digital side of things is a big part of what we're thinking about at the moment.
So is it a BI type of thing, or?
I think the problem is it has been a BI mentality for a long time, and so that, to me, that's a very inward-facing perspective. So we're very good at managing large volumes of data from a business intelligence point of view about, say, back office systems or those types of applications. But the digital age is bringing a whole different mindset around the types of data we need to capture that may not have been part of our landscape earlier, and as I say, certain the volumes as well.
Right.
So it's like BI on steroids, if you like.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the classic, the classic version is, volume, variety, and velocity, and it sounds like you're touching on all of those. There's new kinds of, spoken word, text analytics on the spoken word. How do you even begin to think about that in terms of traditional, BI and data architecture approaches? And
Absolutely, and I think data architecture for us will be the key component here. We have a very strong data architecture practice, and they do a great job, I guess, of understanding what our business is and how best to model it and understand it and what data is important to us. But that's going to open up hugely as we expand more and more digital markets. And that's the part, as I said, I think that's where we're going to spend a lot of energy, intellectual energy, over the coming months.
Yeah, and you think about it a little bit more. When you think about data as a service, the volumes alone and the complexity is immense. The market for PhDs and data scientists has never been hotter. Certainly if I had a kid going into the industry right now, it's like, go be a data scientist. Yeah. But then how do you step it down so that it becomes more meaningful to the business executive, who's been pulled in 15 different ways and doesn't have time to go take lengthy seminars? How can we get these data visualizations, being put in front of people with a meaningful user experience? So it really is big data as a service. And you start to, actually look at the experience of the person who's being confronted with this data, and it needs to come in a sensible, understandable way.
Absolutely, and I think particularly for the market you're talking about, which would be senior executives, board members, people that need to perhaps be making a funding decision about a whole new venture, presenting them with gigabytes of data in a spreadsheet is not. I
want to see how that works out for you.
That's not productive.
Absolutely, and I think part of the skill, or part of the emerging skill, is those highly intelligent, clever people that will understand how to model and represent what's needed, but also using those skills to visualize, I guess is the word I'm looking for, that data. Yes. And something as simple as a pie chart or some sort of bar chart sounds very trivial, but if you get the messaging right about this is then and this is now, and you can put that together in a very compelling visual way, the underlying data is really unimportant at that point, because the message is what you need at that point.
Right.
If you're asked to justify it, sure, I'm sure you have the answers. But the visualization, I think, of the data content and why you might be wanting funding to move into a new area so that you can take the company from there to there is critical.
Yeah, I think, I've started using a lot more information graphics in my presentation stuff, whereas before, even, assessment reports and stuff like that, I used to have, the traditional big table, multiple columns, multiple rows. And I would even look at it and I'm like, oh, this is brutal. It's like, I don't want to read my own stuff.
Absolutely.
And now I've started using more information graphics, which tell the same story, but you can look at it very quickly. I mean, and I'm seeing executives and the leaders that I'm consulting to, they're taking just that piece. They're taking can you send me that image? Not the table anymore. It's the image because it strikes you. 74%. Boom. There's the the big chart, like you said. You're comparing before and after.
They don't want that whole pile of data that you've collected. They want the picture that comes out the top of it.
Yes, absolutely.
The meaning behind the data.
And I think to your point, which is critical, we're not saying we're getting rid of the data. It's still there.
Of course.
But we're trying to, in this age, this digital age when we're getting bombarded with, and I always try to break down the, data, information, wisdom, knowledge, that whole model, right? And that's, I think, the problem. We have far more data than we ever need. And there's more noise in the data. How can we simplify this to get it to that executive that you've got 15 seconds with? He's going to look at that report. If you give him a 3-page report, if he goes through that first page, you're good. How do you give him that simplification to get him to want to read page 2, to get him to call you, hey, Carey, I need you to come in. Explain to me what's really going on here.
What's behind the scenes here?
So how do you, in your seat, how do you do that? How do you, transform that?
It's tough, but I think you mentioned you've got a tiny, 15 to 30-second window, and these folks are very busy folks. They don't have time to, they've probably got 27 items on an agenda. So I think the key is visualization. I think the CIO, if not already part of that discussion, needs to be there to understand the background or the backstory, because the pie charts and the tables are great, but if there's somebody in that meeting that asks that awful technical question that you don't have an answer for, and there may be those people in those meetings, then that's important. So to me, as I say, understanding the data, the way data will change, being able to explain why those data volumes and models are changing, and being able to compellingly explain that to the people that need to go on that journey with you from the top down is critical.
Well, one thing that I've always spent a lot of time, or found more interesting and more important is not so much the point in time, but the trending. And I think once you have that, I think that tells such a different story.
Yes.
Are we heading in the wrong direction? Nothing bad has happened yet, but are we heading in that direction? Historically, have we seen what happens? So I think once you start pulling that together, you can tell a different story. And I mean, we're here at this conference, and I think that's been a lot of the underlying theme, the experience. What's going to be that experience for the person if you can't tell them that story early enough? You've got your 15 seconds. If you can tell them, like, here's where we're heading, I don't know we're going to get there, but if we do, it's going to be bad. So I think that's the biggest thing. So what have you seen in the sessions that you've been involved in the keynotes that help you with that?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. And I think trending is valuable to explain what may happen if you don't respond quickly enough, or if you don't provide the funding right now. Is very interesting. Traditionally, if you look at infrastructure side of things, we've been monitoring and measuring for years in increasingly sophisticated ways. Data and the forecasting that will tell you about, say, a server health or something physical in the data center has been something we take for granted for some time. If we can now translate that thinking into a board discussion that says, if we do not change our tack in this area or invest more heavily in this area, then not something as obvious as revenues, but things like market share or our compelling vision in the marketplace, those things that are brand valuable. If you can explain how the trend within your marketplace is changing thinking and how you may not be trending along with everybody else in terms of your attacking of those new areas and new markets, that's another compelling way of looking at trends and your alignment or otherwise with those trends.
Well, Carey, thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you and finding out your view on the data and what we do with it when we get it.
Indeed.
Thank you, Carey.
Welcome. Thank you all.